How many of you have your own houses? Fantastic. How many of you were happy when you got the keys to your new house? Well, how many of you were upset or confused when you moved to your new house? Today, I want to take you all on a trip down the memory lane. 16 years ago, it was the housewarming ritual of our new home in Jaipur. We were all excited. Being from a Baniya family, traditions involved exchanging lifafas. All of a sudden, we saw our mother taking out money from the envelopes she had received and putting them in the ones she had to give out. Us siblings knew something was wrong. It was then that we realized that the quest to have our own home had made us bankrupt. Creditors made our lives miserable. Eventually, selling everything off, we had to leave the city and move to an altogether new place. My father opened a shoe shop in Dahanu in Maharashtra and started to rebuild our family. Slowly, the rest of the family moved. Future started looking better, but things don't go as planned. There was just one school in Dahanu. Marathi was compulsory there. Running out of options, my sister and I took admission in a CBSE school in Vapi, 80 kilometers away. But hey, we knew we would find our way up. With little money, we took the 5:50 local in the morning and came back with the one at 1:30 in the afternoon. With little to no friends and no time for sports, we were looking out the window for a brighter future with childlike persistence. But things don't go as planned. Papa opened another shoe shop in Vapi, looking for a quicker turnaround. The distance made it impossible for him to look after both the shops. It was then that I decided that it was now time for me to carry the baton for my family. Reluctantly, my parents agreed. Maybe it was too much to take for a 14-year-old. But hey, I knew that I would work my way up. My after-school hours were spent at the shop. It involved doing everything from selling a pair to carrying huge boxes of shoes on my shoulders for delivery to local shops. Studies were boxed in the time left between traveling to school and managing the shop. Usually, the days ended at 10 p.m., reconciling accounts with my father and a journey back home. Meanwhile, I took my 10th board exams. Surprisingly enough, I was the only one in the entire district to score a 10 on 10 grade. I was ecstatic. But things don't go as planned. Apparently, in India, smart students are earmarked for science, oftentimes irrespective of their interest or choice. I was one of the smarter ones now. All my teachers had fixed a seat for me in science. Well, you know what? As smart as I was, I didn't like science. Instead, I wanted to study economics. I pleaded, but nothing moved my teachers. I knew in my mind that I had to work my way up. All I needed was a solid reason to convince them otherwise. My brother and I sat down and identified a few of them. The best way was to chart a future for me in line with my subject of choice. Somehow, I remembered the years-old words of my father. Disillusioned with one senior bureaucrat's callous and undignified behavior towards him. He said to me, "Beta, तू बड़ा होकर कलेक्टर बनना और एक अच्छा अधिकारी बनना जो लोगों की मदद करे." Little did I know then that these words would one day give direction to my life. The plan was set. I was to take commerce in 11th, score well, go to Delhi University, study economics honors, and become an IAS officer. But once again, things don't go as planned. Despite scoring well, the college administration refused to admit me in economics honors and allotted me BCom honors instead. The plan was beginning to fall apart, but I knew that I would work my way up. After much persistence, a ray of hope emerged. Somebody suggested me to convince the economics head of department to recommend my name. I took the challenge up. For the next few days, I did nothing but stand outside the staff room waiting for the HOD to hear my case. People walking in and out curiously yet silently stared at my misery. Alas, on the 8th day, it happened. I got my recommendation as well as my rightful place, lest with the condition that I will top the class every single time. With those expectations in mind, I entered into the economics class. Things seemed to get back on track, but things don't go as planned. Having joined the economics class later than others meant losing out on initial friendships. Moreover, in a South Delhi college with little to no conversational skills in English, survival was a challenging task. My books were my only friends. The first semester happened. I stood fourth in class. I could not keep my promise to my HOD, and I had no friends. Things were getting out of hand. I knew that I had to work my way up. I found a friendly face and thought of introducing myself. I went back home that day and wrote out a potential conversation with her. I thought I would start with, "Hey, I'm Shubham." She would respond, "Hey, I'm X," and so on. And just like that, we would be friends forever. Next day, I walked up to her, all the while playing this conversation in my head, and finally said those words out loud. To my utter surprise, 2 lines into the conversation, she started speaking to me in Hindi. All this fright in the world, and for what? These 2 sentences? Well, we became good friends. And then I made some more. Apparently, the limitation was only in my head. I realized everything happens twice. Once in your mind and once in reality. And oh, by the way, before we move on, I topped the rest of the 5 semesters. It was now time to delve into my journey of getting in the IAS. But things don't go as planned. I failed my first attempt. I knew I could do better. For the next one, I put in all that I had. And it worked. I cleared the prelims as well as the mains. The smooth journey messed with my head. When it was time to prepare for the interview, I became overconfident. With less knowledge and overconfidence, I walked into the interview hall as well as my worst nightmare. I knew it then that it was tough times ahead for me. The results were out. I had surprisingly secured All India rank 366. Little did I know then that it wasn't the interview, but the mains that had pushed me in the list. I had secured a place in the Indian Audit and Account Service. I gave a third attempt and failed again. Quite naturally, I wasn't delighted. I knew that it was a longer journey for me. I knew that I had to work my way up. Meanwhile, I joined my training in Shimla. I had all but given up on my dream, but decided to fill the form one more time. And probably for the last time too. Preparing with the 9 to 5 training was one hell of a task. With enough efforts, I cleared the prelims. Now it was time for the most uphill task, the mains. For the next 4 months, I didn't know when the days started and the nights ended. Once again, I moved to the next stage, the personality test. I was determined to not repeat my mistakes of the past. I prepared and prepared and prepared. On the day of the interview, I was confident, despite the fears of the past dragging me down. I battled it all and with a happy heart, sat in front of the board, all set to give it my best. But things don't go as planned. As I sat across the board and questions were asked of me, I realized that it wasn't going as well as I had built it in my mind. Question after question, it kept getting scarier. I had all but given up on any chances of getting a good score. I looked towards the chairperson he was seemingly sleeping with his head down. I was confused and really frightened. I knew then that I had to work my way up here. I patiently waited for the right moment to make my mark. I knew in my heart that life can't be so unfair to me. I really had put in the hard work this time. Last 2 minutes of the interview, a nice smiling lady changed the theme of the questioning and started asking me about my hobby, reading non-fiction books. I instantly knew that I had to absolutely nail this, and I did. The chairperson also raised his head. I could feel the changing energy in the room. I walked out of the room with a smile on my face. The results were out. To my utter disbelief, I had secured the much coveted All India Rank 6. I rechecked. It was still All India Rank 6. I didn't know how to react. I just called my father and said to him, "It's done." And then let it all flow. I had to catch a bus back home from Shimla. My phone kept buzzing the entire night. I could feel my whole life changing that day. But amongst all such unknowns, I knew one thing for sure. I was the happiest person on the bus that night. I was now destined to go to Mussoorie for my training in Labasna. My whole journey from 366 to 6 kept flashing in front of my eyes. 2 years ago, when I had gone there to represent my previous service, all my batchmates were buying Labasna tracksuits. I just couldn't. I felt I didn't deserve it. Now that I had earned the right to wear one, I just couldn't wait. But once again, things don't go as planned. Despite scoring All India Rank 6, I wasn't allotted my home state, Rajasthan. Instead, I was sent to Maharashtra. The Marathi language that had forced me and my sister to change schools was now to become my first language. I knew that I had to work my way up. I landed in Nashik for my district practical training. Slowly, I found my feet in Nashik as well as Maharashtra. I even learned to speak reasonable Marathi. But as usual, things don't go as planned. I was transferred to Bhamragad in Gadchiroli, a place infamous for left-wing extremism. My parents were really scared for me, kept calling to check up. Suddenly, the call dropped. When I checked, I realized that Gadchiroli had only limited network. Reality hit me then. I realized that I was being sent to a place which needed a lot of commitment and sacrifice. To top it all, I didn't have a place to live in. Having come this far, I knew I had to work my way up here. I started to work and slowly made Bhamragad my home. I realized that if there was any place which needed my commitment, it was this. My father's years-old words about being a good administrator kept echoing in my head. I wanted to work for the people in a meaningful way and undertook various projects, such as starting bike ambulances to ensure healthcare delivery to the most unconnected paths, issuing caste certificates on blockchain to ensure immutable delivery of benefits, onboarding mobile science laboratory to inculcate scientific temper in tribal students, using artificial intelligence to monitor nutritional parameters of meals served to students in tribal schools, and some more. But once again, things don't go as planned. Just as I was surrounded by contentment, one of my staff one day informed me that the Naxals had dropped a chitti in my name. I didn't know what it meant. Apparently, it was some sort of pamphlet indicating I could be their next target. I didn't know how true it was, but I was really scared for myself and my family. I tried to get out of it, but to no avail. Having lost on options, I decided to work my way up. I got back to work and tried my best to keep my mind off this. Eventually, I got posted out and promoted as Chief Executive Officer, Zilla Parishad, Dhule, after 25 lifelong memorable months of serving the people of Gadchiroli. Just as I was settling in Dhule, my first book came out. And you know what? It was written by the very same person who was so incredibly hesitant to speak in English. That very same person is standing in front of you all on one of the most prestigious platforms today. Life really has come a full circle for me, hasn't it? And it can happen to each and every one of you. So all I'm trying to say is, no matter how much you plan, life unfolds itself in mysterious ways. All you can do is make the most of it. Stay committed to yourself and your cause. No matter how the little things shape up, the big picture, the ultimate goal will always manifest itself. Act positively towards your goals. Destiny multiplies your efforts multiplied. Remember, the multiple of 0 is 0. Gulzar Sahab explains the circle of life beautifully through one of his couplets. It goes as, बदल जाओ वक्त के साथ या वक्त बदलना सीखो. बदल जाओ वक्त के साथ या वक्त बदलना सीखो. मजबूरियों को मत कोसो. मजबूरियों को मत कोसो. हर हाल में चलना सीखो. नमस्ते.